Welcome back, Justin here. Got some beautiful dahlias here in the garden, enjoying this last warmth of the summer. Put these in a few months ago and they've grown pretty well, but yeah, would be better to get them in a bit earlier because they've only really just started blooming, and in a couple of weeks it'll all be over when it gets too cold. But very nice display nonetheless. So we've got a lot of Cattleyas coming into bloom. Well, a couple anyway. So let's go and take a look, shall we? So this beautiful Cattleya here is a Cattleya dupriana. It's the first time it's flowered for me. It's a primary hybrid of Varshavicii and Warneri. Quite a large flower, about 18 centimeters, 7 inches. Really beautiful color on the lip, which is, I guess, typical from Varshavicii, the deep colored lips it's known for. They often also have 2 eyes in the lip, which this one doesn't really have. But yeah, it's a really a nice hybrid and very vigorous. I think I got this plant about a year ago from Lucca as a bare root import, and it recovered very quickly. It's put out 3 new growths each year since then, and on this one it's flowering just with a single flower. Now Varshavicii can hold many flowers, up to 7 flowers I believe on a single inflorescence, and very large flowers as well. And Warneri I think also can hold 3 to 5 flowers. So if it would be really well grown, it could be quite spectacular. So I guess that would be the challenge for me in the next couple of years, is to try to get this up to producing multiple flowers per spike and multiple spikes flowering at the same time, and could give a really nice show. But I'm really happy with this. I really love the lip on it, and it was kind enough to open up on my wife's birthday last week, so that was a nice surprise. So this is another first time flowering for me. It's Cattleya tropical pointer cheetah. This one also from Lucca 2.5 years ago I got this plant. It's a bifoliate hybrid, very colourful as you can see. The flowers are a lot smaller than the last one, dupriana. Well, let's put that next to each other so we can compare. Alright, so that shot gives you a good idea of just how large the dupriana, the flower, is, because the ones on the right, the tropical pointer, they're not that small. I'd say they're about 7 or 8 centimeters across, probably. Very colourful. But yeah, the dupriana with the Varshavicii, which is probably the largest of the Cattleyas, the flowers. Yeah, you get quite a large sized flower on that. But yeah, this one also very nice, and this one has a nice fragrance on it, a little bit citrusy. But this dupriana has a bit of an odd fragrance to it. I wouldn't describe it as that pleasant. It's kind of a weird one. Yeah, it's probably a question of taste. Some people might like it. It sort of smells a bit musty to me, whereas the one on the right is more of a fresh fragrance. So these are the first 2 Cattleyas that have opened up for me in the late summer, early fall flowering season. I haven't had any Cattleyas flowering for some months now. So really happy to have these 2 flowering now, and there should be some more coming along the way. So this next one is not a Cattleya, obviously. This is the Vanda cerulean. which I got recently. It was already in spike when I got it, and supposedly this was the pink colour form, which it's not. It's the blue colour form. Having a bit of trouble getting the, so it's kind of overexposing on that. Yeah, there, more like that, I think, is a bit closer to how it is. Yeah, still a very nice display, and this is quite a small Vander, I'd say, for the not that wide, not that broad, but a really nice display nonetheless. This gorgeous miniature is Phalaenopsis equestris ceruleaform. Really, this plant is really doing very well and putting on a really nice display. Quite abundant display of flowers there. So yeah, I find that this Phalaenopsis takes a bit more sun than a lot of some of the other ones. It's got the narrow leaves, as you can see, and I do let it dry out a bit more than some of the other Phalaenopsis as well, and it responds very well to this treatment. The other one, which is a firm favourite of mine, is Phalaenopsis mariae. Very colourful flowers. It's not a spectacular display. You can see some amazing displays on if you look it up on Google when they're grown into specimen plants. It's still a young plant, but it did grow quite a good sized leaf this year, but it got a couple of black spots on it which I ended up having to cut out, and I put a bit of cinnamon on there just to stop it from spreading. So I think this one is a bit more sensitive to the cold than equestris. Need to be careful that the nighttime temperatures aren't getting too low, and by too low I mean under 17, 18 degrees. They probably prefer to be above 20 degrees, pretty warm growing. But having said that, I can grow them here in my household in the winter. You know, it's 18 to 21 degrees, kind of in that range, and they seem to be able to cope with that. But yeah, the more warmth you can get into them in the summer, then the better, I guess. That's my hypothesis, at least. This one is my Phalaenopsis Bellina. Really nice fragrance on this one. I've had it for many years, so it's a little bit of a tatty plant because it's been a bit neglected at times over the years, but doing pretty well this year. So while we're on the topic of Cattleyas, I thought it might be fun to just take a look at some of the Cattleyas, how they're going, and especially the seedlings. The species, I've bought a lot of them over the last couple of years. So yeah, let's just take a look and see how they're doing. Alright, so this first one is Cattleya velutina. I got it about a year ago, I guess, from Lucca. Yeah, exactly 1 year ago. And it's doing well. It's grown a nice long new growth. For a while it was a bit touch and go, but it has come on pretty well. So I've got it in this very free draining aerated mix, and in the winter I actually had it in here. I thought it's too dry, but then the summer, it was a very damp summer, so it was actually very useful having it like this, being able to pull it out like this, and then it started to look a bit happier again, because we had really high humidity with a lot of rainfall for a period of about 6 weeks, while the rest of Europe was scorching hot. Northern Europe was soaking wet and cold and miserable. So yeah, it's actually pretty handy to be able to do that. So that's probably a technique which I'm going to use a bit more often. And this Cattleya schilleriana, in the end I repotted it, so I had this inside a closed pot. It wasn't looking very happy, and it did push out a tiny little growth, which then subsequently aborted. So this is, and I think I bought these two at the same time. So this is one that's not doing as well, but hopefully now I've got it into this same setup, hopefully it's also going to respond pretty well. Another one here, Cattleya Warneri alba. Had this one for 2 years. I think I repotted it in February of this year into this open pot. Also again with some pebbles in the bottom just to increase the drainage. And I think it's responded fairly well, but it's not putting on huge increments. It's kind of stagnating, and I see this with quite a few of them. Here's another one, another example, Cattleya mossiae. Also not really setting the world on fire. Then the new growths that are coming out are just kind of about the same size as the previous year's growths, maybe even a little bit smaller, and I see that with quite a few of the Cattleyas. So it's got me scratching my head. But then again, some of the other ones are doing really well. So this one here is Cattleya Varshavicii, Orchid Eros clone. And this one is growing pretty well, but it did start growing very late in the season, and I know that Varshavicii can put out 2 growths in a year. So it's sort of like it skipped the first growth increment, and then just in August it started putting out this growth, and then it's been coming out pretty quickly. And this is another Varshavicii, and this one pretty similar story really. It did start growing a bit earlier, but it's putting on a good size growth there, so they're not too unhappy. But yeah, I think I need to tweak things to get them grow a bit earlier in the season. This one here is an interesting one, Cattleya ludemaniana from Venezuela. Cerulean bivinicolor, should be a very beautiful clone or cross. Well, it's not a hybrid, it's a species, a cross of 2 clones, 2 named clones. Yeah, it's a bit of a long story, but you get what I mean. So yeah, this put out a good growth this year after last year putting out a very poor growth. And what I did this winter was I took this one into the house, and then it responded very well to the warmer temperatures in the house. So some of the Cattleyas definitely prefer a bit warmer in the winter. And I've got another example here, which is Cattleya bicolor. Exactly the same story there. So the latest growth, that's the biggest one on the end there, is very good. The year before it was worse than the year before that, so, and that was when I think I kept it in the greenhouse over the winter. So these 2 plants have responded well to being in the warmer conditions in the house. And you see that marking on the lip, on the leaves there. I think it's probably fungal, but if you have an idea what it is, I'd be interested to know, because I do see it on a number of the plants. And well, obviously I'm concerned that it might be viral, but I guess it's fungal. But it has kind of spread throughout this plant. So if you've got any tips, by all means leave a comment, I'd love to hear it. Right, so these 2 plants are an interesting story. So they're both Cattleya walkeriana. It was the same plant which arrived from Lucca, and the plant on the left was the large part. It fell apart into 2 pieces when I received it. So I put the plant in the right into sphagnum moss just to see how it would go, and the plant on the left I kept in a bark mix, and you can see that the plant on the right has actually done much better. So this is the new growth here on the larger, what was a much larger piece, and this is the new growth on what was the much smaller piece. I've since repotted it into bark, but it just goes to show that sometimes you just need to try different things, and when they come in from Brazil, the imports, they don't have much in the way of roots. and sphagnum moss might really help them to recover. Then again, it might not, but in this case, definitely it did. And I'd like to show another example here. So this is a Cattleya amethystoglossa cerulean. This plant was really struggling, really couldn't get it going at all. The leaves were all wrinkled, and I was thinking, God, what am I going to do with it? So in desperation, it had no roots, so I threw it into sphagnum moss, and you can see there's a little growth coming, and if you look closely, you can see some roots have grown there as well. So it's doing well in the sphagnum moss, but the question is how long to leave it in the sphagnum moss. So it's done its job, I suppose you could say. The roots have grown, it's recovered, but that sphagnum moss will start to go off pretty quickly, about 6 months. So could either renew the sphagnum moss or put it into a bark mix. Once it's got the roots, then hopefully it'll be okay. Right, so this plant is another interesting one for me, at least. It's a Laelia purpurata carnea. It's a plant that I've had for many years actually, and I wasn't growing it at all well. So a couple of years ago, this was the growth the growth that it was putting out. They were getting smaller each year, and then I improved the culture by increasing the amount of sun, increasing the amount of airflow. That was I think the main temperature change. Also switching to rainwater and a good fertilizer regime. I think they've all helped. So you see it's come back very well. But this leaf here, if you compare it to last year's, it's still quite a bit smaller, but I know that purpurata is also, for me at least, a species which grows all the way through the winter, and the leaf just keeps getting longer and longer. So probably this leaf, but yeah, will it be bigger than last year's leaf? That's what we're looking for, and I don't think it will. So something not quite, not fantastic, but yeah, so I guess. And if I can compare that to the plant here, which I've got is actually a hybrid. It's 50% purpurata, and you can see that the new leaf this year, you compare it to last year, it's much bigger. So this is a much better progression. But ironically, this one last year flowered, but this new one doesn't have any sheath. So again, it's weird. What's going on? There was less light this year, but I think they set their buds already when they're growing, when the first getting all tongue-tied and twisted now. When the growth eye breaks, I think at that point in time it's already basically decided if it's going to flower. I might be mistaken there. If you know any better, please let me know. So it's really the previous year's growth then that more or less should have a strong influence, and also the winter care also would be a strong factor in whether it's going to flower, and the amount of sun especially. I'm not too sure, but anyway, it's growing very well. The new increment. This is what I'd like to see on my purpurata, this type of increment. This one, however, is quite a success story. So this is my Schomburgia or Myrmecophila, whatever you want to call it, Cattleya, probably Laelia, Thomsoniana. There you go, there's the label. I've had this for easily 10 years and it's always been one step forward, one step back. But this year I did pot it into this net pot, again increased ventilation, and it's just taken off with the growth this year. So much bigger growth, really dwarfing the previous year's growths. I'm not sure how much bigger it would need to get to flower, or if this would already be big enough to flower. But this one is definitely going in the right direction. So if you're growing myrmecophillas, yeah, you might be able to garner something useful from this setup. They really like to have a lot of airflow, and of course in the tropics a lot of people grow them mounted to trees, and they do very well that way. This is the other little Myrmecophila exaltata. Well, little at this stage. It probably would eventually become quite a large plant, but you can see that growth there also very good. Much bigger than the previous year's growths. So also heading in the right direction. So somehow the Myrmecophillas were quite happy this summer, whereas a lot of the Cattleyas is more of a mixed bag. Some happy, some less happy. We're just fighting to carry on. This is Cattleya lobata. This plant's doing pretty well, although again it started growing pretty late in the season. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see how big this leaf is going to get. Is it going to get bigger than the previous year's leaf? It's in a very small pot, very free and draining, lots of sun. I think though that they're the main success factors. And this one is Cattleya leopoldii, aka Tigrina. Dark Prince is the name of the clone. Had this one for a couple of years, and the growth increment this year is better, so it's a good size, but still, yeah, I hope that it really starts to kick on a little bit. It is putting out some pretty good roots, so hopefully if they can stay alive through the winter, we can get a nice big growth next year. This one is Prosthecia mariae. Sometimes they're lumped in together with the Cattleyas. So, but I just think this is a fun plant. I just like the pseudo bulb on it, very spherical, and the leaves, and it has grown this bulb since I got it. Probably 6 months ago, I guess. So it seems to be very happy with the warmer summer, so we'll see how it goes over winter. So this one is my Cattleya dormaniana, and this one is doing really well. So this is one of the weird and wacky bifoliates with really very unusual looking flower, but it's growing on 3 axes, and the growths are bigger than the previous years, so this one is heading in the right direction. And this is not a particularly large plant, so I think once the canes get to 20-25 centimeters, then it should be flowering size. Hopefully in the next year or two we'll get there. This one is Laelia perennii semi-alba. So this is another rescue plant that I've had for many years. I see that it's a semi-alba. It was almost dead when I improved the culture specifically for these Cattleya types, and since then it has responded very well. But I do wonder if it doesn't have some kind of virus or something. It's got these markings on the leaves every year, and the roots now, they've kind of all died off again. It keeps on doing this, but it's growing very well. But yeah, it could well have some kind of virus or something. What do you think? You got any ideas? If you do, please let me know. Yeah, so I think I'll wrap it up. Probably, yeah, there's probably quite a few more even that I could go through, but I think this is enough for this episode. So yeah, thanks for watching.